Here with me is Heather McGhee, the New York Times bestselling author who wrote The Sum of Us, a book that chronicles her travels across the country where she met people from all walks of life and had some tough conversations about race. Heather, this has been a fascinating, listen, the mask debate was much more front, mask not. I feel like everyone's talking around the race issue because no one wants to be called racist.
That's right.
But on the flip side, people who are saying, listen, these conversations need to be had, don't want to be portrayed as alarm bells either. What do you make of this?
I mean, it's tough because none of us has been really well served by our education here. All of us as Americans, white, black, brown, everything in between, in many ways have been robbed of our shared history. Do you know that less than 10% of high school seniors can accurately say that slavery was the primary cause of the Civil War?
Why is that?
Because we've been miseducated, we've been lied to, because there's been a reason to try to suppress the real history because it's too painful. And because, in fact, the more we're ignorant of our history, then the more we can easily be divided.
So now you have some teachers and some powerful voices of color, if you will, in these districts who say, okay, now we have a seat at the table. Let's correct these wrongs. And then suddenly what I believe, well-intended conversation about race in schools gets co-opted by people who say critical race theory.
Yeah.
And now you've scared parents, and now these two things are conflated. Critical race theory is this. Something else is the conversation of the history of this country that involves racism, that involves children knowing the true cause of the Civil War. Those are two different things, but they've been conflated.
That's right. And one of the architects of this campaign to pass all these laws in states, these history bans, these attacks on honest education, one of the architects was very frank on Twitter. He said, we want to make critical race theory into sort of a boogeyman that just encompasses everything that makes basically white people uncomfortable about talking about race. But here's what it's being used to do. It's being used to ban lessons that could, quote unquote, this is straight from the legislation, cause feelings of guilt or anguish among students because of actions in the past taken by members of their own race. So this is basically saying, for example, with Ruby Bridges' book, right? Ruby Bridges was 6 years old, and she faced down a year of violent death threats in 1960, not that long ago. And yet somehow today, in Tennessee, white students who are elementary school students and high school students shouldn't read about what a 6-year-old had to go through? That doesn't make any sense. How are we supposed to understand?
Well, that particular district said it didn't have a redemptive ending, which was the problem.
You know, it's tough, right? I mean, I feel my book is really a journey of empathy.
Yes.
I really do try to put myself in the shoes of white Americans who have to walk this tightrope. I think a lot of white Americans are afraid that if we truly own up, then there's going to be a price for them to pay. They're afraid that there's this zero sum, that progress for people of color has to come at their expense, that equality, when you're used to feeling privilege, is going to be oppression. That's the fear, but it's simply not true.